Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Thought Leader panel. We're going to be having Zaki up, and we're going to be really deep diving the Cosmos ecosystem predictions for 2023, some retrospective look back, and also his thoughts on decentralized finance and stablecoins. Going to do a little 40-minute deep dive here. Really try to get into the weeds here. Unfortunately, Jack Zamplin could not make it in the end, just to do a last-second scheduling component. So it will just be me and Zaki. But sit back, grab some popcorn. This is gonna be a fun one.
How's it going, Carter?
It's going good. It's going good. Super pumped for this. It's just having this many Cosmos DeFi projects. I in my heart, I know that this event one day will happen in person with these types of projects. It's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just to kick things off here, like when you reflect on Cosmos, the Cosmos ecosystem in 2022, what were the biggest wins? What were the biggest failures? And then, like, after kind of having that retrospective, what do you think the Cosmos ecosystem will be defined by in 2023?
I mean, without a doubt, the biggest failure has been in the demise of UST and the anchor carry trade, right? It's hard. That's the elephant in the room of 2022 in Cosmos, is the osmosis. Osmosis is liquidity incentives, their gauges, the anchor carry trade. People realizing that one of the cheapest ways of getting in and out of anchor was through Atom. All of these dynamics played a huge role in what was happening in Cosmos in 2022, and the collapse of UST was a huge blow to the Cosmos DeFi ecosystem. And so much of what was, and to a certain extent, we were fortunate because of some weird random technical things, Terra launched with a early version of CosmWasm that wasn't IBC compatible. So there wasn't there was actually less interoperability between Terra and the IBC ecosystem that was possible. Like, only Luna and UST could really interoperate with the rest of the IBC ecosystem. So, I mean, without a doubt, it's painful for everyone, right? I think many cosmonauts were in either Luna pools or UST pools on Osmosis, you were using Anchor, just huge financial devastation across the ecosystem. I mean, another reality was, the series, a significant series of setbacks on Evmos. So, between the Nomad bridge hack, the issues around the launch. So, without the honest reality of it is, the future does look bright for Cosmos DeFi in 2023. But 2022 has been largely a trial by fire. But so, it has been great to see the Kujira team move from Terra, launch on Cosmos, bring their technology to Cosmos. Great drama has unfolded. Other things that I think are very true about Cosmos, though, is we have, the 2021 was sort of the peak of the sort of osmosis farming craze on Osmo as a hyperinflationary token, and started this trend towards hyperinflationary tokens. But looking back over 2022, we don't have a lot to show for a lot of the tokens that were given to stakers, given to liquidity providers in the ecosystem. And also the DEX, we have the DEX ecosystem has we're still in like very capital inefficient. Stable swaps just launched on Osmosis. Crescent is coming along nicely. I think is maturing. Injective is maturing. Looking forward to all of these other DeFi ecosystems launching in the ecosystem. These are all the things that I guess I think a lot about with Cosmos, which is, we have to get 2023 has to be a big year of starting with Atom and then moving on, or like, throughout the ecosystem, moving on from this sort of hyperinflationary tokens printed out of nothing, highly, the whole ecosystem being oriented around like incentive-based liquidity to offer to like real utility, real revenue, true like really good incentive designs. And so we're all struggling with that. I think it coincides with the disappearance of the sort of FTX Alameda liquidity engine / fraud.
Right.
Which is, Cosmos was minimally exposed to that ecosystem. But so I guess these are all the things that I think a lot about in the need for Cosmos to start moving on. But like, then I can talk about all the bright spots. Like it is so exciting to see Mechatech and Skip bringing MEV engines to Cosmos, even though the extractable MEV is very low. It's on it amazing to see both the technical infrastructure coming together, and we all hope that the volumes will come. It's it's things like Agoric finally launched, which has been, I've been working with the Agoric team since 2017, so it's been that's an incredible bright spot in my mind. Neutron, Juno are figuring things out. The Cosmwasm ecosystem with Secret and all of the rest of the Cosmwasm chains continues to grow. Osmosis is now really getting into shipping mode, so I think we are going to see more capital efficiency, more web and then ultimately, I think the nature of post FTX is like crypto is gonna, like DeFi is gonna have to provide its own liquidity. Like that's basically like the future post FTX in my mind. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a really good answer. I think like Cosmos is really interesting to me because it's like the tech is there. It feels like the leadership is there. The people is there. So why isn't the liquidity sticky yet? And like a lot of it's tied to, we took the hard route, right? We didn't go, we just spin up an EVM chain and fork, clone, whatever have you, everything seamlessly plugged in. Like it is.
No, apparently we like mostly failed at trying to do. Like let's be like brutally honest about where we are, right? Like we've had modest at best success forking the EVM, like setting up an EVM and cloning a whole DeFi ecosystem onto it. Like it hasn't happened yet on Evmos. It still could, but it hasn't happened yet. Canto has pieces of it, and is exciting, but also feels a little bit disconnected from Cosmos in some ways. So yeah, we have yet to produce, and like the sexiest EVM apps like GMX are not on Cosmos. That's like,
it's interesting to me because in 2022 the biggest challenges that Cosmos really faced was really like an event, right? In the sense that like we had bridge risks, and we had a stablecoin that was the center point of liquidity collapse.
And we like dodged this giant bullet with Dragonberry. Like, just
also true. We don't like to talk about the Binance bridge stuff either. Like that's just failed to talk about that. But I guess in hindsight, separate from those events, is there any regrets or ways you wish our ecosystem would have been more focused on certain components versus other, like in terms of like prioritization? Because it's always a game of prioritization. Like, is there components of Cosmos's focus that you wish would have shifted a different direction in 2022?
It's honestly like I feel like 2022 has been a year of somewhat missed opportunities, right? Across the Cosmos ecosystem, which is, but, on the flip side, it's like we're resilient, we still exist. We're 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 doing in many ways better than many other ecosystems, but I do kind of wish we, it's hard to fully summarize this, but it's like I'm really glad that something like that, like Stride, and got into production. I'm really glad that Quicksilver launched. I'm really excited about Namada launching. I'm excited about having privacy options from both Secret and Namada going into next year. There's, I think Mintscan has done an extraordinary job of making the ecosystem comprehensible to a lot of users. Like it is just it's so nice, like, to be sending IBC packets and like be able to see success or failure of those things. Like they've done without a doubt, it's just like a great job. We've continued to gain more experience with IBC. But on the other hand, we have yet to see on Secret or on any of the CosmWasm chains like a real application that has caught on with users yet. Yeah, I don't know. And like USDC interchain security coming along and making as much progress, and the success of Game of Chains, though there was the network halt, but it was a software bug, and it's a solvable problem. The success of interchain security, the progress on USDC, DYDX coming over to Cosmos, all of those have been huge wins. Yeah, so I don't know. Like we need more applications, we need more utility, we need to build we need to have more things on Cosmos that are like, I think Dove has expressed a lot of jealousy of the success of GMX. And so I hope that inspires more builders on Cosmos to try to build something that captures the imagination of the user base.
Yeah, I think in essence, it's like 2022 was an opportunity to find product market fit, but it's very difficult to do that when you have massive liquidity problems that pop up, right? And like that hurts some of the trust tied to it. And I also think that Cosmos has so many like lower down the stack builders that maybe there's less of like a obsession with like front ends and like those type, like there's components that still need to come along,
I mean,
right?
I think that's a great point, right? It's like we have to steal in Cosmos. We steel man a lot of infrastructure, right? We are infrastructure builders. Like there's a lot. We've been at this for 8 years, and we've been building infrastructure that whole time. And the infrastructure just needs constant work, right? Like everything, Cosmos SDK, Tendermint, IBC, all of these things face real competition in the wider blockchain universe. They require continuous investment. My work in the technical advisory board has been really, which hopefully, we'll be ready to share early in 2023, more of what's going on at the ICF. Now that I know it's like not as bad as, the rumors are, but like it's, and like, I think we're like really setting things up with the TAB for success in 2023 and 2024. But there's just an enormous amount of work that needs to go into the core infra layer. So like, yeah, it's hard as a cosmonaut. Like I'm building application layer stuff at Sommelier. I'm building application layer stuff with IST. So like, it's not like I don't spend huge chunks of my day dealing with application layer stuff. I also am dealing with like Tendermint and infrastructure layer stuff, interchain queries, interchain accounts, new IBC protocols, all of these pieces. We're also trying to onboard like a ever widening ecosystem of non-Cosmos SDK chains into IBC. Yeah, man, it's it is interesting, but like, yeah, we don't yet have a large enough community of devs who are just like, I think, grinding and focused on the app layer.
Yeah, but we'll get there. I think that the 2023 will be what I'm envisioning as a tipping point for interoperability and composability. Like we haven't quite reached that tipping point yet, where like interchain apps and simplified user experiences are fully unlocked. We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. So we've had a nice little zoomed out view of 2022, 2023, and I want to transition. Of course, this is Stablecoin Summit. So I'm gonna like start off with the really hard question. We have this massive opportunity to have natively issued USDC, right? We also have decentralized stablecoins coming into fruition. Both of them present certain risks on both the technical side, the economic side, and the ethos side. So when you think about the role of USDC, what's your thought process on it? And what do you think the relationship of USDC and the Cosmos is to decentralized stablecoins like Silk and IST, CMST, all the different stablecoins that are represented here today?
Yeah. So I think that there's a bunch of different moving pieces here. So one is USDC has the strongest product market. USDC has incredible product market fit in DeFi. Like that's the sort of core that's like the core reality of the situation, right? So a big part of what my work is trying to bring USDC to Cosmos is to have that infrastructural element, and it's like the amount of work that's involved is quite large, right? Like we have there, it's not just you like just like kind of work with Circle, right? Like there are all these different, like how are the market makers and the issue and like the users of DYDX, what are their flows? How do you establish pathways in which someone can put in a bank account or a credit card number to a web widget and have USDC on their Cosmos chain of choice? All of those things are just hugely important. We also have IBC challenges, honestly, with all of these things as more and more chains compose, like this path dependency thing that IBC has, where you want to go back to people are going to want to go back to the USDC chain and then go to the so like if you borrow USDC on Umi, you're gonna bring it to the USDC chain and send it to the Noble, and then send it to like Osmosis to trade or something like that, right? So those experiences are going to become a much bigger deal, and we have a bunch of work to do to like make those tractable and easy for people to understand. But like, yeah, and so the ethos of Cosmos, I don't know. And like the ethos of like so the first thing is like, what is the ethos of Cosmos? The reality is every sovereign chain has its own ethos. We also seen, I think, more and more Cosmos with like different camps sort of emerging, right? Like there's the camp that looks at Kujira's approach to transparency around their approach and says that's against the ethos. There are going to be people who look at any stablecoin with a parity stability module, PSM, that it's using USDC and has a substantial amount of its issuance coming from USDC. Oh, that's just like a centralized stablecoin. It's against the ethos. Some people are going to look at USDC. I think the ultimate ethos that Cosmos has to adopt is pluralism, i.e., there is a space in this place for any ethos as long as there isn't fraud, right? Like every experiment should have a place in Cosmos as long as people are like, this is a real thing. And I don't think that I think ultimately, I go back and forth a lot about whether or not, I think that in the immediate aftermath of the UST situation, that there was a lot of, oh, the Cosmos core, longtime cosmonauts leaders in the ecosystem should have done more to protect the ecosystem against UST. And I'm like, I think now that I think more as we get away from it, it's like, look, the ethos has to accept everything. There are these experiments and disasters are going to happen. The job of Cosmos is to survive and embrace all possible spaces. So that's kind of my view on Cosmos is we should endeavor to inform the people who participate in Cosmos about the differences between all of these things, like how the privacy properties of a Namada and the privacy properties of a secret are different. But we don't need to. This is not about creating religious wars around a set of things in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I think pluralism is the most abstracted out, neutral perspective. I think the hard part is every experiment has risk, and what's the tail risk of a certain ethos tied to being centralized stablecoins are at the heart.
Every ethos has tail risk.
Exactly. Every ethos has tail risk, and I think
I think the scariest things are the ethos is that claim not to have tail risk.
Completely agree, and I guess the question I'm trying to find here is it's really interesting because I know originally consumer chain kind of thought process is we eventually want real world businesses to have their own chains, and it's we're trying to build a totally interoperable ecosystem where I guess there's a slider tied to centralization, decentralization. I guess in my mind though, the one exception to pluralism would potentially be liquidity. And I guess the reason I say that is because if you reach a tipping point in adoption tied to centralization of liquidity, then a lot of these other attributes become irrelevant because liquidity really is at the heart of everything that we're building. So I guess that would be my slight pushback to pluralism. Agreed on pretty much every conceivable perspective, except isn't there a unique risk tied to centralized forms of liquidity? It's okay to disagree. I want to provide a little pushback.
I disagree with the idea that these risks are unique. The risks are not not unique. The risks are of centralized stablecoins, I think, are not unique in the sense that they have risks that come from the legal system. They have risks that come from nation state legal authorities. It's important as we're building USDC into the system that we're designing a mechanism to comply with court orders. These things are important pieces of the worldview that we have to that are part of it. And there are going to be counterparties that prefer those, and there are going to be counterparties that don't, right? And ultimately, pluralism is you get to pluralism and sovereignty is you get to pick your counterparties and your values.
Yep. No, I think that makes sense. I guess over time, there'll probably be different DeFi ecosystems emerge that are, or to your point, that's the beauty of pluralism, that are focused on the decentralized assets purely, and then you have ones that are somewhere in the middle and one that are super focused on it. So
I
like
think
we'll
like
have the full
like
range.
the biggest problem of, okay, so like you want to know the like fundamental root problem of decentralized stablecoin is that unit bias is like such a problem for humanity. Like I'm like super aware of unit bias. I'm super aware of you know how how like my life is denominated in dollars and I think in dollars, and like the US dollar as a unit of account like dominates my consciousness, and I'm aware of this flaw in my mind. But like this is universal to all humans, right? Like that unit bias pervades the way our and like the biggest problem of decentralizing is that like if we could escape unit bias, if we could like somehow abstract unit bias from our consciousness, our options for decentralization would be enormous. But like I think that represents the challenge of truly decentralized stablecoin builders. And like, I mean, this is why proposals like Jay's photon proposal go nowhere, right? Is it's just unit bias pervades our consciousness. Like people denominate things in atoms, people denominate things in BTC, people denominate things in primarily in USD. And that unit bias kind of pervades our entire mind. And so if you want something really decentralized, you have to create an ecosystem that like sort of creates a culture that is like where you have such a large cultural change that you're actually denominating things outside of your unit bias. But I just like my perspective on it is basically like the principal enemy of decentralized in general is like the frailty of human cognition.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I think anyone who's been part of the story of Bitcoin, like there's the Bitcoin maximalists that are like, well, one day like you'll think in terms of sats, or you'll think in terms of this, or and
I do view the like Bitcoin atom chart as like my a little and I do view like and maybe maybe so far that's represented in my mind the success of Cosmos. I think we might move into a world where the Bitcoin IBCX chart or the Bitcoin but like I do it is possible to denominate a lot of success in the ecosystem, a lot of metrics in the ecosystem in terms of Bitcoin. But yeah, it's like I pay for my coffee in dollars.
Yep. I guess the world I would envision is decentralized stables would one day be an aggregate of the many forms of stable assets that have all the unit bias that we all know and love and adopt, such that these unit of accounts would be extremely stable. Like you have a stable coin that's like it's $1.05, and maybe over the course of the year it appreciates against the dollar by 2 cents. And so most consumers holding it are like, oh, there's proximity to the dollar. It's very slow moving. I can maybe get comfortable with the concept. I think there's some on a spectrum of unit bias. You can get a stable coin that inherits a lot of the properties of decentralization, isn't directly pegged to a sovereign dollar, and can get pretty close to the unit bias psychology. But it's really never been done, and it's very, very bold, as you said. Like the ultimate challenge of decentralization is human cognition. I think that's so. You should write that one down, slap that on a plaque. We should get that on Wikipedia. Like that's a pretty awesome quote. But I guess the hope would be is we have to continue to aspire beyond it, even if it's a very real constraint. Because I think if we can do it, then it's worth it. But it's quite the challenge.
Yeah, like my business partner and co-founder of Occlusion and stuff like that has also been thinking a lot about identity in Cosmos, especially because we do so much governance here, right? Like that would be the other thing that's been interesting, right? Is that Cosmos has become like a really like consequential and active and just like, fraught, but like with like real, like Cosmos has real politics, and those politics has consequences. But like, I think we are also starting to see the limits of like plutocratic mechanisms. So Christy's been thinking a lot about, where identity fits into all of this stuff, which I think is relevant to identity is even more relevant to like the privacy work and all of this stuff.
Yeah, I've had a long-standing theory that like there's many countries that have failed to scale because of governance. So like there's like a subset of people that are like, what's the value of governance? It's like, well, look to the real world, right? Like it's clearly like super critical, especially as the amount of value in these protocols grow. So I'm very curious to see how proof of stake and these how governance evolves. If you have like let's say a $100 billion Cosmos chain one day, it's like, do we want every stakeholder to vote on a proposal that's talking about $2,000, right? Like there's got to be like there's limits to these systems, and I think that maybe this isn't
and I think like in designing USDC's integration into Cosmos, we've had to think a lot about that, and we're going to have something for the community out in next year, talking more about the governance. But it's been a huge conversation because, again, Circle doesn't want to be in a position of, oh, we have a court order that we need to comply with, and like governance is blocking about us.
Right. Yeah, I think that this will be the lifelong challenge of any protocol will be governance and the protection of consensus and the ability to govern succinctly. I think that's the models have to continue to improve. We have a long ways to go in Cosmos, so which is exciting. I mean, more power to the experimenters, and it's an experiment that we have to get right. Because if we get it wrong, there might be some major ramifications to governance not being able to scale with the amount of value that's in these protocols.
Yeah,
so
I worry about that a lot.
So I think we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes left here. So we touched on. I mean, clearly in your mind, USDC has distinct product market fit, and it's super important within pluralism to give it a platform, give it an opportunity to integrate into whatever Cosmos ecosystem will have it. I guess to close then, what's the role of the decentralized stablecoin? You obviously play a role in Agoric. You're obviously a fan of decentralized stablecoins. So what's your predictions for the role of decentralized stablecoins?
I'd say I would currently break it into two categories, basically. One category is the soft pegged assets. And the soft pegged assets are playing a very long monetary game, right? About really trying to create, or like the volatility dampened assets, about really trying to create an alternative that is not directly connected to real world assets, right? Like a crypto native thing. And like I've often felt that the cause, going, all the way back to basis, that like, you need the sovereign chain architecture if you really want to even try at this thing. And it's a huge ambition. And I think Doe was hugely ambitious in Terra. And we should continue to have ambitious experiments. Then you have something that is more like IST. And what I would say as I differentiate IST from it is IST is designed to maintain a stable target against the real world asset of the US dollar. But the biggest problem more is, how do you build a stable coin that has the most possible ways of minting it? So like most stable coins are actually in the ecosystem right now are supply constrained rather than demand constrained, right? Where it's like, oh, so treasuries tick up. If you put your stables in, Circle makes 4.5%, but you're holding USDC, you better find some place that you make more than 4.5% in DeFi. to make up for the fact that you're not just sticking that into treasuries. The opportunity cost of these stables is non-trivial, and so those pieces. So now you have something like IST. IST can be minted from real-world backed assets. It can be minted from crypto-native assets, and most powerfully, it is integrated into the Agoric. It is built out of the Agoric smart contract platform, which is natively multi-chain, natively async, natively speaks IBC, allows us to take advantage of everything that is happening in Cosmos DeFi, potentially as collateralization, minting, liquidation mechanisms. So ideally, that scales enormously.
Yeah, it's interesting the supply side restriction versus demand side. I think that's it's an interesting one, because one could argue, does liquidity scale with demand, or does demand scale with liquidity? Like on all of these stable coins, it's like,
I think there is an intuition though that it basically demand scales with supply, right? That stable coins actually have, like, people love them.
Yep. Well, that was our thought leader panel. Really appreciate the 40-minute chunk of time. I think it was a really nice deep dive into forward facing, retrospective. We tackled stable coins, USDC versus decentralized stable coins. We tackled some of the ethos components of pluralism, and we also got to touch on kind of governance as well, and the importance of it. So really appreciate your time, Zaki. I'm sure in the future we'll have another stablecoin summit. Maybe it'll be in person, and just appreciate your time, and thanks for being a guest. I know the community really appreciates it.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for putting this on. Stablecoins are clearly like one of the biggest areas of engagement. We are also, and it like follows the through line post UST collapse of the ecosystem. And so, I think we're going to continue to have to educate, inform, discuss in the ecosystem.
100%. Happy building, sir. And with that, we'll be taking a brief couple minute break here. Go to the bathroom, maybe grab your lunch quick, grab your popcorn, because up next is the stablecoin deep dive. Never before has there been this many stablecoins on one panel. I am stoked to moderate this. We will be back shortly.